The parables of Jesus were never meant to be simple stories for children. According to Edgar Cayce, the great psychic and mystic who gave thousands of readings about spiritual truths, these parables contain hidden codes and secret meanings that only certain people would understand. Cayce explained that Jesus spoke in parables specifically to hide deeper truths from those who weren't ready to receive them, while activating dormant spiritual abilities in those who were prepared. In his readings, Cayce made it clear that the parables weren't just about morality or religious instruction. They were spiritual technologies designed to awaken the Christ consciousness within each person. Each parable contains multiple layers of meaning, and the surface interpretations taught in churches barely scratch the surface of what Jesus was actually communicating. Cayce taught that Jesus knew his words would be heard by different types of people. The masses would hear simple moral lessons, but those with spiritual eyes would perceive the hidden codes that could actually change their consciousness. This is why Jesus himself said, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given." Number 1. The parable of the sower. Everyone thinks they know this parable. A farmer scatters seeds on different types of ground. Some seeds fall on hard paths, some on rocky soil, some among thorns, and some on good fertile earth. The traditional interpretation says this is about how different people receive the Word of God. But Cayce's readings show us something completely different. According to Cayce, you are not just one type of soil. You are all 4 types of soil simultaneously. This parable is actually a map of your own consciousness, showing you the different mental and spiritual states that exist within your own mind at any given moment. The path where the soil is hard represents your conscious, logical mind. This is the part of you that immediately rejects anything that doesn't fit with what you already believe. It's the mental state that says, "That's impossible," or "I don't believe in that kind of thing," before giving new ideas a chance to take root. The seeds that fall here get eaten by the birds, which Cayce explained represent doubt and fear that quickly snatch away spiritual truths before they can grow. The rocky ground represents your emotional nature when it's not properly prepared. Cayce taught that emotions can either help spiritual growth or hinder it. When your emotional body is like rocky soil, you might get excited about spiritual ideas at first, but when challenges come, or when the ideas require real change in your life, you give up quickly because there's no deep foundation. The thorns represent the desires and distractions of material life. According to Cayce, these aren't necessarily bad things, but they become problems when they take all your attention and energy. The cares of the world, the pursuit of money and status, even good things like family responsibilities can choke out your spiritual development if they become your only focus. But the good soil represents your prepared consciousness. This is when your mind is open, your emotions are balanced, and your desires are properly ordered. In this state, spiritual truths can not only take root, but grow and produce fruit in your life. Cayce emphasized that you can work with your own consciousness to prepare more and more of your inner soil. Through meditation, prayer, study, and service to others, you can gradually change the hard paths into fertile ground. You can remove the rocks of emotional instability and clear away the thorns of excessive materialism. The real secret of this parable, according to Cayce, is that you are not just the different types of soil, you are also the sower. You are constantly planting seeds in your own consciousness through your thoughts, words, and attitudes. Every time you think a thought, speak a word, or focus your attention on something, you are sowing a seed that will eventually produce fruit in your experience. This means you have tremendous power over what grows in your life. If you consistently plant seeds of fear, doubt, anger, or limitation in the soil of your consciousness, that's what will grow and manifest in your outer circumstances. But if you learn to plant seeds of love, faith, peace, and spiritual truth, those will grow instead. Number 2. The parable of the lost coin. The story seems simple enough. A woman loses 1 silver coin out of 10. She lights a lamp, sweeps her house carefully, and searches until she finds it. When she does, she calls her friends and neighbors to celebrate with her. The church teaches this is about God's love for sinners and how heaven rejoices when someone repents. But Cayce's readings show us that this parable is actually about something much more personal and immediate. According to Cayce, you are the woman in the story. The coin represents your divine nature, your connection to God, your Christ consciousness. And here's the key point that changes everything. You didn't lose this divine nature by sinning or making mistakes. You hid it deliberately before you came into this physical existence. Cayce taught that every soul makes a choice before incarnating. You choose to temporarily forget your divine nature so that you can experience what it's like to be human, to face challenges, to grow through difficulties. It's like playing a game where you agree to forget that it's a game so that you can have a real experience within it. But this forgetting isn't permanent. The time comes in every soul's development when you begin to remember who you really are. The lamp that the woman lights represents the awakening of spiritual consciousness. The sweeping represents the inner work you do to clear away the false beliefs, negative emotions, and limiting thought patterns that have been covering up your true nature. The searching represents this very moment in your spiritual development when you begin to question everything you were taught about yourself, when you start to suspect that you might be more than just a physical body with a temporary existence, when you begin to feel that there's something divine within you that you can't quite put your finger on. According to Cayce, the joy and celebration when the coin is found represents the incredible happiness that comes when you finally recognize your true spiritual identity. But notice that in the parable, the woman doesn't go outside to look for her coin. She knows it's somewhere in her own house. This teaches us that what we're searching for isn't somewhere else. It's not in a distant heaven or in some future spiritual achievement. It's right here within us, hidden in the house of our own consciousness. Cayce often said that the kingdom of heaven is within you, and this parable shows us exactly what that means. Your divine nature, your connection to God, your spiritual abilities, your capacity for love and wisdom and peace, all of this is already present within you. It's just been covered over by years of being told that you're limited, separate, sinful, or powerless. The searching and sweeping that the woman does represents meditation, prayer, spiritual study, and self-examination. These practices don't create your divine nature. They simply remove the layers of false identity that have been hiding it. Every time you sit in quiet meditation, every time you study spiritual truth, every time you practice love and forgiveness, you're sweeping away some of the dust that has been covering your inner treasure. Number 3. The parable of the hidden treasure. A man finds treasure hidden in a field. He's so excited about his discovery that he goes and sells everything he owns to buy that field. The traditional interpretation says the kingdom of heaven is so valuable that it's worth giving up everything else to obtain it. But Cayce's readings show us something more specific and practical. According to Cayce, the man in the story represents your awakening consciousness. The field represents your current life situation, your body, your circumstances, your relationships, your challenges, everything about your present human experience. And the treasure represents your divine potential that has been hidden within these very human circumstances. Here's where Cayce's interpretation becomes really interesting. The man doesn't just find any treasure, he finds treasure that was buried in this particular field. This suggests that the spiritual riches you're looking for aren't located somewhere else. They're hidden right within your current life situation, exactly as it is right now. This completely changes how you view your human experience. Instead of seeing your body as a limitation, your circumstances as obstacles, or your challenges as problems to escape from, you begin to recognize that these are the exact conditions that have been chosen for your spiritual development. Cayce taught that every soul chooses its life circumstances before incarnating. You choose your parents, your body, your basic life situations, even your challenges and limitations, because these provide the perfect conditions for learning specific spiritual lessons and developing particular soul qualities. When the man in the parable sells everything to buy the field, he's not rejecting or getting rid of his human experience. He's embracing it fully because he now recognizes its true value. He's willing to give up his old way of looking at life, his old identity, his old priorities, his old understanding of what's important, in order to claim ownership of the field where his treasure is buried. According to Cayce, this represents a complete change in perspective about your human life. Instead of trying to escape from physical existence to find God, you recognize that physical existence is exactly where God can be found. Instead of viewing your body as a prison for your spirit, you see it as a temple. Instead of seeing your daily activities as distractions from your spiritual life, you realize they are your spiritual life. This doesn't mean becoming attached to material things or neglecting spiritual practices. It means recognizing that everything in your experience, including the most ordinary and mundane activities, can become vehicles for expressing your divine nature. When you're fully present and conscious, washing dishes becomes as spiritual as praying. Taking care of your body becomes as sacred as meditation. Loving relationships become direct expressions of divine love. The key insight from Cayce's interpretation is that you don't find the treasure by leaving the field. You find it by fully inhabiting the field, by bringing complete consciousness and presence to your actual life circumstances right now. Number 4. The parable of the pearl of great price. This parable tells of a merchant who travels around looking for beautiful pearls. When he finds one pearl of exceptional value, he sells everything he owns to purchase it. On the surface, this seems very similar to the parable of the hidden treasure, but Cayce explained that there's a crucial difference that contains a powerful spiritual code. In the treasure parable, the man stumbled upon his discovery accidentally. He wasn't looking for treasure when he found it. But in the pearl parable, the merchant was already a professional pearl seeker. He knew what he was looking for, and he recognized supreme quality when he saw it. According to Cayce, this represents a more advanced stage of spiritual development. The merchant represents someone who has been consciously seeking spiritual truth for some time. Through many lifetimes, through years of study and practice in this lifetime, you've been examining different spiritual teachings, different practices, different understandings of truth. The various pearls represent all the different spiritual ideas, methods, and partial truths you've encountered in your seeking. Some have been valuable, some less so. But then you find the pearl of great price, the one truth that makes sense of all the others, the one recognition that suddenly illuminates everything else you've learned. What is this pearl? Cayce taught that it's the recognition of your own divine nature. It's the moment when you stop seeing yourself as a limited human being trying to reach God, and you start recognizing yourself as God expressing through human experience. It's the shift from seeking to being, from becoming to recognizing what you already are. But here's the deepest part of the code that Cayce revealed. The merchant doesn't just buy the pearl. In recognizing the pearl's true value, he recognizes his own nature. The seeker realizes that he is what he has been seeking. The finder discovers that he is what he has been trying to find. This is why spiritual seeking eventually comes to an end. Not because you stop growing or learning, but because you realize that what you were looking for was never actually missing. You were looking for God while being God. You were trying to find love while being love. You were seeking peace while being the consciousness in which peace arises. According to Cayce, this recognition doesn't make you egotistical or grandiose. Instead, it makes you humble, because you realize that this divine nature isn't something you earned or achieved. It's what you are and what everyone else is too. The only difference between people is how clearly they recognize this truth about themselves. When you truly understand this parable, spiritual practice changes completely. Instead of trying to get something you don't have, you're learning to express something you are. Instead of trying to become worthy of God's love, you're learning to let God's love flow through you. Instead of trying to achieve enlightenment, you're learning to live from the enlightenment that is your true nature. Number 5. The parable of the wheat and tares. A farmer plants good seed in his field, but while everyone is sleeping, an enemy comes and plants weeds among the wheat. When both grow up together, the workers ask if they should pull up the weeds. The farmer tells them to wait until harvest time, then separate them. The traditional interpretation says this is about good and evil people coexisting in the world until Judgment Day. But Cayce's readings show us that this parable is actually about the different aspects within your own consciousness and how to work with them skillfully. According to Cayce, you are the field. The wheat represents your divine nature, your higher impulses, your connection to God. The tares represent your ego patterns, your fears, your limitations, all the aspects of yourself that seem to work against your spiritual development. And here's the surprising part. The enemy who planted the tares was also you. Cayce taught that before incarnating, your soul actually chose to experience certain limitations and challenges. You chose to temporarily forget your divine nature. You chose to experience fear so you could learn courage. You chose to experience separation so you could learn love. You chose to experience limitation so you could learn to express your unlimited nature through limited circumstances. From this perspective, the tares aren't your enemies, they're your teachers. Every fear shows you where you need to develop faith. Every limitation shows you where you need to express more of your divine capabilities. Every ego pattern shows you where you're still identifying with something false instead of recognizing your true nature. But here's the crucial part of the parable. You don't try to destroy the tares prematurely. The farmer specifically tells his workers not to pull up the weeds, because in doing so, they might damage the wheat. Cayce explained that this means you don't try to get rid of your human personality, your ego, or your limitations through force or resistance. Instead, you let both grow together while nurturing the wheat more than the tares. You acknowledge your fears without being controlled by them. You recognize your limitations without being defined by them. You observe your ego patterns without being identified with them. All the while, you're putting most of your attention and energy into developing your divine qualities. According to Cayce, trying to destroy your ego or eliminate your human personality is not only impossible, but counterproductive. These aspects of yourself have important functions. Your ego helps you navigate the physical world. Your emotions provide information about your experiences. Even your limitations serve to focus your energy and attention in specific directions. The art is learning to let your higher nature be in charge while still having access to all the capabilities of your human personality. It's like being the conductor of an orchestra where every instrument has its proper role, but they all need to play in harmony under wise direction. The harvest time mentioned in the parable represents moments of spiritual maturity when you can clearly distinguish between thoughts and impulses that serve your highest good and those that don't. At these moments, you can consciously choose which aspects of yourself to express and which to set aside, but without judgment or violence toward any part of yourself. Number 6. The parable of the lamp under a bushel. This parable is short and direct. No one lights a lamp and then covers it with a bushel basket. Instead, they put it on a lampstand so it can give light to everyone in the house. The usual interpretation is about sharing your faith and not hiding your beliefs. But Cayce's readings reveal a much more specific and challenging meaning. According to Cayce, the lamp represents your awakened consciousness, your recognition of your divine nature, your spiritual gifts and abilities. The bushel represents all the excuses you make for not expressing these gifts fully. Cayce was very clear about this point. When you begin to awaken spiritually, when you start to recognize your true nature and develop your spiritual abilities, you have a responsibility to share these gifts with others. Not in a pushy or evangelistic way, but simply by being authentically yourself and allowing your light to shine naturally. The bushel basket represents all the ways you dim your light to avoid this responsibility. You tell yourself you're not ready, not qualified, not good enough. You worry about what others will think. You're afraid of being rejected or misunderstood. You think you need more training, more experience, more credentials before you can really help anyone. According to Cayce, these thoughts aren't humility. They're actually forms of selfishness because they put your comfort and security ahead of your service to others. When you have genuine spiritual gifts and you hide them, you're depriving others of the help they need and could receive through you. But this doesn't mean you should be arrogant or pushy about your spiritual development. Cayce taught that true spiritual light is naturally attractive. When you're genuinely expressing your divine nature, people are drawn to you without you having to convince or persuade them. Your very presence becomes healing and uplifting to others. The key is authenticity. When you stop pretending to be smaller than you are, when you stop apologizing for your gifts, when you stop hiding behind false modesty, your natural light begins to shine. This doesn't mean claiming to be perfect or pretending you don't have areas where you're still learning and growing. It means being genuine about both your humanity and your divinity. Cayce also emphasized that letting your light shine isn't primarily about talking or teaching. It's about living from your highest understanding, moment by moment. It's about bringing consciousness, love, and wisdom to whatever you're doing, whether that's raising children, doing your job, or simply being present with someone who's suffering. According to the readings, when you truly let your light shine, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity makes it safer for others to be authentic. Your courage to be yourself inspires others to find the courage to be themselves. Your willingness to express your divine nature reminds others of their own divine nature. Number 7. The Parable of the Two Builders. The final parable tells of two men who build houses. One builds on sand, the other on rock. When storms come, the house built on sand collapses, while the house built on rock stands firm. The traditional interpretation is about building your life on Jesus' teachings rather than on worldly things. But according to Cayce, this parable is actually about two different approaches to spiritual development, and it contains a warning about what happens when external structures begin to collapse. Cayce taught that you are actually both builders simultaneously. Throughout your life, you've been building two different versions of yourself. One version is built on the sand of external validation and approval. This identity depends on other people's opinions, on social status, on material success, on institutional authority to feel stable and secure. The other version is built on the rock of inner spiritual knowing. This identity draws its strength and stability from your direct connection to divine truth, from your own inner guidance, from your personal relationship with God, rather than from any external source. According to Cayce, we're now living in a time when all external structures are being shaken. Every institution you've relied on, every authority you've looked to for answers, every external source of security is being shown to be unstable. This includes religious institutions, governments, economic systems, even family structures and social conventions. This shaking isn't happening to destroy you or to punish anyone. It's happening to wake people up to the fact that true security and identity can only come from within, from your connection to the eternal source of all life. The storms that are shaking the external world are actually serving to strengthen those who have learned to build their lives on the rock of inner spiritual knowing. Cayce emphasized that this is why spiritual development is so important right now. Those who have learned to access their own inner guidance, who have developed their own direct relationship with divine truth, who have built their identity on their spiritual nature rather than on external circumstances, these people will remain stable and even thrive during times of external chaos. But those who have built their entire sense of self on external things will find themselves feeling lost, anxious, and confused as these external supports are removed. The solution isn't to try to make the external world more stable again. The solution is to discover the rock of inner knowing that was always there, waiting to be recognized. According to Cayce, this rock represents your direct spiritual connection, your ability to receive guidance and wisdom from within. your capacity to know truth not because someone else told you so, but because you can recognize it in your own heart. This inner knowing isn't based on beliefs or opinions. It's based on direct spiritual experience that becomes stronger and clearer the more you learn to trust and follow it. The parable teaches that building on this foundation of inner knowing isn't just spiritually wise, it's practically necessary for navigating the times we're living in. When external authorities are contradicting each other, when information sources are unreliable, when traditional structures are breaking down, the people who have developed strong inner guidance systems are the ones who can still make good decisions and live peaceful, productive lives. Edgar Cayce's interpretation of these parables shows us that Jesus wasn't just teaching moral lessons or religious doctrines. He was providing a complete system for spiritual awakening, encoded in simple stories that could be understood on multiple levels depending on the consciousness of the listener. Each parable contains what Cayce called soul codes, spiritual technologies designed to activate dormant potentials within human consciousness. When you truly understand these parables, they don't just give you information. They actually change your state of consciousness and help you recognize truths about yourself that you may have forgotten. According to Cayce, we're living in a time of great spiritual awakening on this planet. More and more people are beginning to remember their true divine nature and to develop their spiritual gifts and abilities. The parables of Jesus provide a roadmap for this awakening process, showing you how to prepare your consciousness, how to find the divine treasure within your human experience, how to integrate all aspects of yourself, and how to share your gifts with others. The codes are still active, the teachings are still working, and if you've been drawn to this understanding, it may be because your own soul is ready to remember who you really are and to express that divine nature through your unique human experience. According to Edgar Cayce, this is not just your privilege, it's your purpose for being here at this time in human history.